They're not properly distinguishing, I think, between the church herself, the divine institution, and her human element, because the church herself cannot sin. The church is holy. That's one of her four marks. What do you think, Father?
Yeah, no, the church is the spotless bride of Christ. It's the human actors in the church, you and me and everybody else. We're the ones who not only are capable of, but actually do commit sins. And this I would say this whole penitential service is sort of a politicized examination of conscience, and
Mm-hmm.
it's oriented to basically beating down people who have doctrinal concerns about where the synod's going. It uses the caricature expression that we hurl doctrines like stones.
Right, right. And that's this list of sins I was going to show you. You mentioned an examination of conscience. These are apparently the sins that were confessed during this service in Rome, some of which I suppose are legitimate, but others are clearly like a caricature, as you said. So we have a sin against peace. And again, how do you sin against a concept? You can sin against individual people. You can't sin against a concept of peace. Or how do you sin against poverty? You could sin against poor people, but you can't sin against poverty itself. We also have, I'm sure this is a shout out to the climate change agenda, sin against creation. Um, Obviously, the sin of abuse is a real sin. People could also sin against women, family, youth. But here's the one you mentioned: sin of using doctrine as stones to be hurled. What does that even mean?
What that means is that people who make dogmatic claims in the church against innovations are viewed as being uncharitable and wrong. Uh,
Mm,
so if I say you can't teach that divorced and remarried people can go to communion because they live in an adulterous marriage, a second union, that would be viewed as an unkind form of stoning of those two people, where it's the exact opposite. It's a
mm,
liberating call to repentance. When you leave an adulterous union, you can go to confession and return to the state of grace and receive communion worthily.
mm,
The sin, it says sins of abuse. They leave out sexual. The word sexual, that's what we're talking about in the
mm.
real world when you talk about abuse. Uh, they talk about sin against synodality. What in the world is that?
Yes.
If synodality is meant to be where everybody listens to each other, well, do I have to get pre-approval from you before I can tell you something? I mean, that's not listening. That's dictating to people. So this is real. In essence, it's silliness because it's making people into basically grammar school children who have
Mm.
to be told to play in the sandbox and anticipate whatever the teacher's going to tell you and agree with it. So it's silliness.